Okay, so it's time to yet again return to the video store and choose yet another crazy, wacky comedy from the 80s to investigate. Because of course, who doesn't love wacky comedies from the 80s? Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, I have a treat for you, as we're going to be looking into the classic Trading Places. Yep, seeing how we're in late January, it seems like the perfect time to check out a Christmas movie. So, I can't wait, let's go and check this out! Trading Places, classic comedy movie starring comedic legends Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd and directed by John Landis. Released in 1983, it tells the story of a wealthy stockbroker, Louis Winthorpe III, played by Dan Aykroyd, and poor street hustler Billy Ray Valentine, played by Murphy. Two complete polar opposites, and after their paths cross, Winthorpe's wealthy employers decide to make a bet to see what happens when Winthorpe's and Valentine's social statuses get switched in an elaborate society hierarchy experiment where Winthorpe now finds himself desperate and on the streets, all while Valentine is now given Winthorpe's job and other extravagant riches and comforts. While Valentine enjoys his new luxurious life of wealth and luxury, Winthorpe discovers just how tough life on the street is, as he becomes someone that he would have previously shrugged off and looked down upon. Desperate to get his former life back, Winthorpe seeks the help of street lady Ophelia, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, where a discovery of greed, corruption, and dodgy business schemes ensues. Okay, it may not be a Christmas movie per se, but it's still set during Christmas, and it features Dan Aykroyd as a drunken Santa Claus. So it totally counts. So, let's check it out. Number 10. It's a modern take on an old tale. Although Trading Places very much may have seemed like a product of its time, what with its focus on trades and stocks, of which the Wall Street scenery is often associated with the 80s, the story in which Trading Places is based on is indeed also a product of the 80s. Be that the 1880s. In which Trading Places is somewhat a modern retelling of Mark Twain's classic 19th century novel, The Prince and the Pauper. First published in 1881, The Prince and the Pauper sees a wealthy prince and a poor beggar, who both look alike and temporarily switch roles, with the beggar being able to enjoy a life of luxury and the prince now being able to see what a life of poverty is really like. Only in The Prince and the Pauper, the two characters who trade places are in fact children, and the prince who becomes poor goes through an awful time. Man, that poor kid gets beat to hell. Although the switch was meant to be temporary, due to complications, the now poor young prince has to struggle his way back to his palace duties. And thus, thanks to the themes of social economical switches, fans over the years have spotted similarities of the two stories. Some even claim that Trading Places also takes inspiration from Mozart's opera, The Marriage of Figaro, of which the movie even opens up with music from the classical play. Number 9. Original title. The Trading Places script was written by Timothy Harris and Herschel Weingrod, both of whom would go on to write Kindergarten Cop and Space Jam. The original idea of Trading Places was about two competitive and wealthy brothers who would often play tennis and also place bets against each other, as they had an expensive sibling rivalry. This was the basic bare bones of the story in its early stages, and when the two writers got to work on the script, the original title of the movie was indeed Black or White. The script writers sold the script to Paramount Pictures, where Black or White then became Trading Places, and Paramount also got John Landis involved in directing the movie, as he was a rising talent at that time, having directed Animal House, The Blues Brothers, and An American Werewolf in London. Number 8. It was going to star two different comedic geniuses. Trading Places featured Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy, who were fresh new talents at the time. However, the original cast was going to be slightly older and more veterans in the field, as it was originally intended for Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor to star as the movie's two main leads. The two comedic legends had already starred in 2 movies together, with Silver Streak and Stir Crazy. However, Pryor had suffered an injury, so he was unavailable. So Paramount then turned to Eddie Murphy, who had just starred in 48 Hours. Although the movie hadn't been released yet at the time of Trading Places' early production, they could still see that he was a great movie star in the making. Landis then wanted to cast Aykroyd in the Winthorpe role, but Paramount were hesitant, as at that stage Aykroyd was considered a double act with John Belushi, who sadly passed away 1 year earlier, and they weren't sure if Aykroyd would be marketable without Belushi. Keep in mind, Ghostbusters hadn't been made yet, and the movie that Aykroyd was most associated with was The Blues Brothers, but Landis still pushed for Aykroyd, to which he was cast. Landis said that he felt that the script felt very old-fashioned, like a screwball comedy from the 30s, so maybe using a fresher new cast was also a way to make it feel less old-fashioned, and, more of the moment. But hey, that's just speculation. Number 7. The studio didn't want Jamie Lee Curtis. Director John Landis has also spoken about how he had to somewhat fight to get co-star Jamie Lee Curtis to star in the role of Ophelia, as the studio oddly were not keen in casting her, as they felt she was just too associated with horror movies, thanks to her performance as Laurie Strode from John Carpenter's Halloween and Prom Night, which was basically Halloween gone disco. As with Aykroyd, John Landis really fought to get her involved in the movie, to which she was eventually cast. One of the most notable things you can tell about her role is that she had great chemistry with Dan Aykroyd, to which the two would go on to play love interests again 8 years later in My Girl. And Curtis proved that she had pretty good comedic timing, and would go on to star in other memorable comedies such as A Fish Called Wanda and True Lies, transcending her from being a horror movie scream queen to a versatile actress able to pull off a range of different roles, especially comedy. Number 6. The Eddie Murphy Rule. Trading Places may have seemed like just a harmless, wacky comedy of the 80s, however, it actually inspired a real-life law and regulation, known as the Eddie Murphy Rule. The rule was introduced in the Trading Commissions in 2010, and it was inspired by the subplot in Trading Places, in which the Duke brothers tried to profit from orange juice thanks to an illegally obtained crop report on the agriculture of oranges. To avoid this happening in the real world, the Eddie Murphy Rule was brought in. The Tradings Commission chief, Gary Gensler, said himself that the new rule was inspired by Trading Places. As if having the name of one of the co-stars in the regulations title wasn't enough to convince you. Wow, you know that your movie must be pretty impactful when it changes the law. Number 5. Trading Places is an Italian Christmas tradition. Speaking of impactful, there is one part of the world that has really been impacted by Trading Places, and still to this day has never really gotten over Trading Places' comedic LOLs. And that place is none other than Italy. Yes, it seems that Italy loves Trading Places so much that the movie has become something of a Christmas tradition. As ever since 1997, Trading Places is always broadcast on TV at Christmas time. Not a bad Christmas tradition if you ask me. Now granted, I think every Christmas should consist of presents, crackers, foods, and a crazed Dan Aykroyd pointing a gun while dressed up as a hobo Santa. But it seems that Italy, more than any other place in the world, has fully embraced this tradition. Number 4. See You Next Wednesday. There is a scene in Ophelia's apartment where we see that she has a movie poster on her wall for a movie called See You Next Wednesday. And if you're scratching your head thinking to yourself you've never heard of See You Next Wednesday, that's okay, as the movie doesn't exist, as it's a continuous running gag in John Landis's movies. See You Next Wednesday was a line of dialogue Landis heard from the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, where he liked the line and wanted to make a movie with that sentence as the movie's title. However, that never came to be, so instead Landis's movie that never happened would often make it in the background scenery of movies that he directed, such as Schlock, Kentucky Fried Movie, The Blues Brothers, An American Werewolf in London, Michael Jackson's Thriller, which Landis directed the same year as Trading Places, as well as Into the Night and Coming to America. So although the poster seen in Ophelia's apartment may seem like just a meaningless prop, it's actually part of a long-lasting joke that nearly made it in all of John Landis's movies. Number 3. Bobblehead Marketing. The main movie poster that we all associate Trading Places with is this iconic one, with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy looking very happy and like they're in the money, with dollar bills all over the place, while the layout of the poster itself looks somewhat like a dollar bill. An alternative one is this illustration of showing both the characters looking into a mirror, displaying who they are, with their reflections showing who they are going to be, with Aykroyd as a wealthy man seeing himself as a poor man, and vice versa for Murphy. It's actually a very clever poster, and probably my favourite one. However, believe it or not, but several other not so well known movie posters went for a bobblehead approach, giving our characters huge heads with little bodies, such as this one with Murphy and Aykroyd somehow defying gravity and falling into the sky. Yeah, this is a weird poster. Even Aykroyd looks confused as to what's going on. Along with this poster, which shows the characters in both their poor and wealthy states. Yeah, so much bobblehead in this one. Heck, the bobblehead approach even made it to Japan, where this poster was used. Only this time it wasn't an illustration, but actual photos of Aykroyd and Murphy, which were edited to make them look like they had bobbleheads. Now, personally, I don't see the connection between Trading Places and bobbleheads, but clearly someone in the marketing did. To me, it's as weird as making, a chair as the main marketing point. Oh look! They did it! Yeah, I've got nothing. Number 2, effects on the real stock exchange. Now, what if I was to tell you that Trading Places caused the stock markets to come to a stop? Now, you'd probably think that I was crazy, but that's exactly what happened. The movie got in the way of the real stock market, or rather the comedy antics of Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy got in the way. Trading Places was to have a scene to be filmed in the World Trade Center, and it was decided to film the scene involving Murphy and Aykroyd during a working day, with real stock traders in the background who were supposed to be doing their trade jobs while Aykroyd and Murphy acted, which, to be honest, would have actually made the scene feel authentic. However, that didn't go to plan, as the stock traders were just too distracted with Aykroyd and Murphy, along with what was going on in general. So much so that the stocks had stopped, due to the traders not trading. So it was decided to stop filming because they were too distracted. So instead it was decided to film the scene at the same location, but during the weekend. And the stock traders were now replaced by extras, as not to cause any more disturbances in the stocks. Number 1, it was a huge hit. It may have seemed that Trading Places was just a small comedy movie. However, it was a comedy movie that went a long way, as it made $90 million in the box office on a $15 million budget. In fact, upon its release, it reached number 3 at the box office, trailing behind Return of the Jedi and Octopussy, while totally annihilating Superman 3. Yeah, it beat the Man of Steel himself. Trading Places went on to be the 4th highest grossing movie of 1983, behind the as mentioned Return of the Jedi, Terms of Endearment, and Flashdance. The movie was also praised by critics, particularly the comedy antics of Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. And the movie would even go on to be nominated for and win several awards, including a Best Actress Academy Award that was won by Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah, remember I said Paramount originally didn't want to hire her? From 1983 to this very day, Trading Places still hits a nerve with people, which may not only be because it's funny, but because it's a movie that challenges our social placing in society, along with rising above it. The following year, 1984, was a big year for both Aykroyd and Murphy, as Aykroyd would go on to do Ghostbusters, and Murphy would go on to do Beverly Hills Cop. Both movies would be huge and transform both actors into big-time Hollywood heavyweights. And I like to think that Trading Places is what helped the two actors get there. The bridge that led to those two movies, so to speak. But that aside, Trading Places is a great comedy movie, and proves that Christmas movies don't just have to be for kids, and that they can also be a little bit naughty. Anyway, I'm Minty, and if they ever make a movie about me, I hope they don't give me a giant bobblehead on the movie's poster. That'll be weird. See ya!